Good afternoon. You're listening to Cannabis Corner on WNHHLP 103.5 FM, broadcasting live from downtown New Haven. We are streaming live on TuneIn Radio and NewHavenIndependent.org. We're also streaming live video on Facebook and YouTube. Just go to your Facebook page and look us up, or hit see first to see and hear all the great programs we have here on WNHHLP. And as a reminder, Cannabis Corner is also streaming live on the Greenhaven Media Facebook page and ProCannabisMedia.com. Welcome, everybody. It is Monday, May 19th, 2025. Welcome to Cannabis Corner. I'm your host, Joe LaChance. I am flying solo right now, waiting for Uncle Lou, Farmer Lou, to head on in. I'm sure he's taking care of some dispensary business right now. But we got a great show lined up for you today. We got Jason Ortiz coming on, and he is going to be catching us up on what is going on with federal decriminalization. We know we have a lot of fun stuff happening here in Connecticut with our own medical and adult use programs here, and the way they're trying to shift it around and do all kinds of enforcement. But there is activity happening on the federal level, and Jason is very much involved in that. And they recently had a Cannabis Unity Day, a week of action up there in D.C., and I want to talk to him about that and what went on and what was accomplished. So he'll be coming on a little bit soon. But I did want to go over a few events that we have coming up. So let's see what we got going on here. Tomorrow night, over at the Burn and Learn, we have a puff and paint with the lovely Sarah from C Creations. That starts at 6 o'clock. You can find out more from Burn and Learn CT if you want to know a little bit more about that. We are also going to be off the air next week. So I did want to go over some other events that'll be going on in the time period that we are off air. We have an immersion drum healing going on at Running Brook Farms. And for those of you who don't know, Running Brook Farms is a great place up there in Killingsworth, and is run by Becky Gush. And she is an ex-hemp farmer, and she's very involved. She's doing some great events up there. You should check them out on her website. It's runningbrookfarms.com. But on the 29th, they have a drum healing, which is very cool. I don't know if you've ever done it, but an immersion drum healing is very, very cool. We also have coming up psychedelic self-care, and this is going to be through Aaron Doolittle, and that is on the let's see, when is that? The 31st, from 3 to 7 p.m., and that is up in Manchester. You can find a little bit more about that. And of course, we have the Burn and Learn Outdoor Spring Festival coming up on the 31st as well. That goes from 12 to 7. That will be at Holy Ghost Park. You can find out more about that from Burn and Learn CT. So there is a few different things going on May 24th. The CBG Gurus have a grow class, part 2 of their garden prep class. So if you want to get your plants rolling, go out and see them. There, you can check them out through the CBG Gurus. And then, of course, on June 4th and 5th, we have the CMB, which used to be called the CWCBE, the CMB Expo, and that is in New York at the Jacob Javits Center. So while we're waiting for Jason to come on, and Lou, there's Lou. There's Lou. How are you, Lou? Oh, he's on mute.
Just hey, how's it going, good brother? Just pushing through the beautiful day and kind of trying to make things happen as you move forward. You know what I mean? How are you? I know you went through the morning and kind of had our back.
Yeah, I did want to talk about what we got going on Sunday, the 25th, over in Nautilus. We got Grow City Depot coming down.
Yeah.
Doing a little demo. I was waiting for you to come on and talk about that. We had one on this Sunday. It was great with Shoreline Hydro, and we've been doing them pretty much on a regular basis with various growers around,
On
grow
Sundays, yeah.
stores. Yeah, grow stores. It's been very
So the
nice.
idea, the idea is that we still support the grow community, and people are going to do what they're going to do, which is totally cool. And we're just a space for different members of the community to come in, advertise their wares, share some information. Coming in on these days, it's no cost. These guys are owners of grow shops and growers, and just looking to continue to spread some knowledge and put some put that out there for them.
Yeah, and I think that's important for dispensaries to
Yeah, yeah.
understand. And then I'm very happy that you are supporting it because, logically, most dispensaries wouldn't. And they
Yep.
don't. They don't. Let's be real.
Right.
So I think that's a great thing that you're doing because no matter what, no matter what is in the dispensary, whether you own the dispensary or not, we want to
Right.
encourage people to grow their own.
Exactly. Because you can take and do something. You can create the space for it. You're gonna need some cannabis anyway. I'd prefer you shop if you are with somebody who supports your habit. You know what I mean? Support your hobby, and why not,
Yeah,
right, Joe?
and you
I'd
can make
rather
your
bring
own
people in.
products. I
I
think a lot of
can't.
they don't realize. Yeah, you're going to grow your own. You're going to grow your 6 plants, but is that going to last you a year?
Right.
You're going to need to supplement, and you're going to go to a dispense. Need to go to it,
Exactly.
and so we're hoping that you'll come to us because we have supported you in your growing activities. But I think people need to realize also that you can make your own medicines when you grow your own medicine. So it's not necessarily about growing cannabis to smoke. There are certain things, and let's be real, you as a dispensary owner know this, that you just can't get.
Yep.
You just can't get them. You can't get a powerful tincture. You
Yep.
can't get strong edibles. So this gives a person an opportunity to learn how to make their own medicine, which is really key, is going to be key in the coming years. So I think that's a key part of growing that people don't always, realize is that you can make
Yep.
medicine.
Let him too.
Yeah, when you grow your own.
Yep. 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 Yep.
So
Yeah.
I wanted to touch base real quick. We talked about this last week, and this is his home because it's right in our town of New Haven.
Mm-hmm.
But they busted, and they did one in Stratford too. So over the last week, they have busted one, two, three vape shops in New Haven. I don't want to give out the names because I don't, you know what I mean, but they are pretty, just basically vape and smoke stores. And
Mm-hmm.
between them, they had over 100 pounds of weed.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is glaring. And then they just busted one in Stratford here with 107 pounds of weed. That's a single store.
Yeah.
107 pounds of weed that they were selling to the general public. So, I mean, I know there's a lot of controversy about this right now. And of course, why is the state, realistically, the argument goes, why does the state need a task force if they're already busting people like this? Why do they need to take money from the social equity and from the, programs that were supposed to be for the community and create a task force when they're already busting people for doing this? Is that necessary? You still there?
I'm here. It's a catch-22. You walk past the shop that one of the New Haven ones, and it's the Simpsons sitting right in front of it. You know what I mean? You
Right.
want to talk about the
The
idea
other
of
one
not
looked like
enticing,
Toys R Us. Yeah. If
you
you saw
know,
the
like,
sign,
yep, yep.
right.
Um, so it's tough.
It is
You know,
tough. And look, there's something needs to be done. I agree. I
it's
think the state's over enforcement just shows their mentality. But you're right. I'm looking at these pictures. They got all kinds of, like you say, cartoon type of marketing on them and enticing to kids and all that. So I agree with you. I just think the state goes always overboard with the
well, the
enforcement.
state goes overboard with everything, because if it was like any other shop, they were doing something that they want to deem illegal, they could enforce it in different ways. But the state, when they've gone crazy on everything, even with the definitions of things. You know what I
Oh yeah,
mean?
they
So
have, and it's like a new toy because look, they've been checking liquor stores for years to selling for underage kids, right? And they've
yeah,
been busting them for years. They also with smoke shops have been busting them for selling tobacco products and vapes to
right.
underage kids. Anyway, so they've already sent people in there all the time. So I just don't see a need for a task force, and I also think realistically, if you're just going to, like you say, fine them, then you're just paying a fee to break the law. I
Right.
mean, I think if you do catch them, you got to give them a little, maybe a suspension. You got to close for a while. I don't know, but I think there's got to be a little bit more than just a fine because these people are making money hand over fist. So a fine doesn't matter to them.
Oh yeah, trust me, they're making great money on it.
Well,
And
when they're getting 100, do you have 100 pounds in your dispensary?
no, not at all.
No. So, I mean, it gets to be ridiculous and blatant. And of course, if we had a decent, again, obviously you're in the legal industry, but we also know the pitfalls of it. If they had done it right in the first place and
Nope,
allowed
can't
for a
even go
more,
there, Joe.
yeah, I
Can't
know,
even go there because New York City has the same exact problem, and New York City has literally licensed every single, like anybody who put an application in is getting approved.
right,
It's just happening little by little,
right,
but every week there's 100 new licenses with a lot less standard
restriction,
and
yeah.
restriction than what we got.
Well,
So, and they've
Lou,
got a huge problem similar to us.
but yeah, they're licensing them. Yeah, I mean,
No,
I
no,
think we talked about this last week. They've been doing this in New York forever. They have been selling weed out of smoke shops in New York long before it was legal, and you know
they've
that,
been
have
doing
it.
it. They've been doing it in Connecticut from way before it was legal, bro.
Just not to the extent.
If you knew where it was, you knew where it was. A smoke shop
Right.
was always a spot to pick something up. You know what I mean?
Yes,
So
certain
it's
ones. Agreed, agreed. But you had
yeah.
to know.
So
You
it's
had to
not even
know.
like you had to know. But
Right.
then when it became legal, everybody was like, well, it's legal, so nobody's gonna where it wasn't necessarily in the way that they believe. But again, the ambiguity in the law is what it is. But nobody should be locked up for cannabis either way.
No,
You
not
know what I
locked
mean?
up.
It's
No, I
weak.
agree.
So you
Like
want
you
to pay
say,
a fee, you want to pay a fee, pay the fee.
Mhm.
You know,
I agree.
um,
I
and
agree.
sometimes just and everybody does what they do.
Yeah.
Did I sell weed back in the day? I completely
Yes,
did.
certainly did
You
too.
know what I mean? So
Certainly did because there was a need and you had to fill it. And that's what these smoke shops are doing. There's a need, you got to fill it. So, yeah, we'll leave it at that. Apparently, the bill did pass through the Appropriations Committee, and now it's going to go to the floor. So, that's an update on that as far as that goes. But yeah, let's move off that topic because we got Jason coming on
yes,
today. He should be on in a few minutes. He told me to be on a little early. And he's going to update us on what's going on the federal level. Because I mean, we have our own issues here in the state, and every state that has legalized over the past 10 years, really. I think the first one was what, 2016? So we're going on 10 years of legalization here. Um, has has certain issues with the way they've set up their programs. We all know that. I don't think there's any perfect adult use program in the country, but I also believe that a lot of the reason there isn't is because it's still illegal on a federal level. So I think, and this is why I want to talk to Jason, if we can get it up over that, to this next level on the federal level, we're going to see an entire change. You're going to see the industry shift in an entirely different direction. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with you. Depending on what happens and what ends up taking control, we can see a lot of different things
Well, that's what I
coming.
want to talk to him because decrim, obviously you, me, and every other cannabis user would like to see full decrim.
Well,
Um,
well,
but there's a lot of meaning to that. You there? Oh, okay. But anyway, yeah. So
Yeah,
D.
so it's like what comes out of a full decrim? Do the exact same thing happen? Because even with a full decrim, is it? Do you take it from the smoke shops that are selling it without the taxation or any of that stuff? Do you still chase them as a business practice or as a? Do you know what I mean? Because then it's just a ticket,
Right, right, for the consumer. Right, right.
right? So now for the salesperson, who's doing what, what's getting where. There's still that whole skewed, and I think that they have seen enough of it that it's like, well, what do we put the safeguards, not safeguards, do we put the bullshit, the bull, laws in place and regulations in place beforehand, or do we implement something and have the same 2-3 year of the wild west after just having 4 years of unregulation as they're trying to ramp up all the regulations now? You know what I mean? So there's a catch 22 on all of it.
No, no, yeah, I agree, and that's what I want to talk to Jason about the different nuances of what are they thinking decrim is on a federal level. We know how they did it here in Connecticut, right? You're not going to get arrested if you have a less than what was it, ounce or half ounce at the time on you. You're just going to
Right.
get a fine. So what does that mean on the federal level? And again, we see where
Right.
it ended up on the sales level. It's created a bunch of different quagmires. Ah,
Mm-hmm.
here we go. The man is here. Jason Ortiz is joining us right now. And of course, look at him. I mean, I don't even know if I need to give him a formal intro because the man, I think we need to get right down to it. Everybody
Sure.
knows who Ortiz is. I mean, I don't have to
That's
give
right.
Jason has been a leader in the cannabis industry, not only in Connecticut, but now on a national level. He's a director of strategic initiatives for the Last Prisoner Project. And of course, him, along with myself, was arrested at a young age for cannabis, and that kind of kicked off his activism career. And he's been involved in all different kinds of things, especially legalization here in Connecticut. But now Jason is working with Last Prisoner Project to help take the decrim legalization initiative to the next level, which is repairing the damage that was done over the years from the war on drugs. But Jason, first things first, I want to get to what is important. How's Puerto Rico?
Puerto Rico is
If
pretty amazing.
I'm looking at you right now. I mean, you
This
look
is
like
not Puerto Rico though. This is actually Connecticut.
I'm looking at you though. You. I mean,
Yeah.
that tan, I mean, look at that.
Understand. I appreciate that. It's been
No.
a beautiful time there, and there's a lot of amazing cannabis work to do in Puerto Rico as well. I'm really excited to start getting involved in that. Got to get interviewed by Crónicas, which is one of the magazines there, and meet up with some of the other folks that are like doing good work. So all the stuff I learned here in Connecticut, all my experience is now going to benefit the people of Puerto Rico.
Well, yeah, you cut your teeth here in Connecticut, and we were successful. I mean, let's be
Yeah.
real. We did what we set out to do. The
Yes, we
rest,
did.
the rest is history. But
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
we'll live in infamy. But anyway, you see what's going on here in Connecticut.
Sure.
It's
Yeah.
typical. It's typical Connecticut mindset. You would have thought with a little shift in the legislature, we would have got a little bit different attitude, but obviously that's not happening here. But of course, we have good activists here in
Of course.
Connecticut, and they are also helping you and joining you in the fight. I wouldn't say I hate using the word fight, but you know what I
It's a
mean.
fight.
Yeah,
I mean, it's definitely a struggle,
in a
like
struggle or
and
in
there are
the
folks fighting against us at every
yes,
turn. And so, I mean, anything that's like a big collective movement that's trying to tackle big issues will be somewhat of a fight because there are people that benefit from the status quo, right? And those people are going to fight tooth and nail to keep their privilege and their, advantages. And so we're working to try to bring the whole country of activists together now to do it at the federal level and operating, at the congressional level of how you move things through that legislature is very different than it was in Connecticut. And,
right. That's what I wanted to talk to you about. And
sure.
I spoke to Joe Raymond and the Can
Hey, yeah, shout out
Warriors.
to the Canna Warriors. Shout
They
out to
showed
Duncan.
up.
Shout out to Audrey. Shout out to Christina.
No, they showed up.
They did.
heavy duty, and I want to show a video that Joe that you sent me that Joe gave. I'm just trying to figure out how to do it. Hold on. um,
Yeah, I can
but
put a little
yeah,
context on the video. So
yeah,
basically,
they
we
can tell us about that whole week of unity that they came down for.
yeah. So, as the Last Prisoner Project's Director of Strategic Initiatives, I do help mobilize the Cannabis Unity Coalition. And so, that coalition, which the Connecticut Canna Warriors are a part of, is made up of over 30 different organizations from the left, from the right, from the center to criminal justice reform. Law enforcement are a part of it. And so it's a pretty wide range of different orgs that are participating in it. And every year, so far, this is the second time we've done it, we mobilize a big week of action in DC, specifically to tell the Congress that we want full descheduling of cannabis. So that would be the farthest we could go as far as decrim goes. It wouldn't automatically change all of the penalties, but we would have the best ability to do that after we were to deschedule cannabis. And so we were there to push on a few different bills, none of them that are currently in the legislature are full legalization bills, unfortunately. So,
Yeah, no, I wouldn't expect that right out the gate.
right. And so we got some work to do before we get there. Although the MORE Act did pass, 5 years ago in Trump's lame duck first time around. And so it is possible, but definitely this is a different legislature.
No,
So the three bills we are really pushing for are the Prepare Act, which would create a federal cannabis commission. So it'd be an actual entity that would then design the roadmap to full regulation. The
okay,
States Act 2.0, which would basically just protect any state legal cannabis from federal enforcement and also
okay.
open up some pathways for interstate commerce. And then the last one is the Evidence Based Drug Policy Act, which would
Mm.
eliminate a restriction on the Office of National Drug Control Policy from reporting on the positives of cannabis and controlled substances. Right now, our biggest research arm in the country at the federal level is not allowed to actually say that there are positives about any Schedule 1 controlled substance. So we're trying to delete that restriction so that research can actually move forward in a way that's honest and fair and actually representing, the benefits of cannabis.
Now, I find it interesting. A lot of I've been reading a lot that the actual new DEA, the head of DEA that Trump put in, is actually open to this. Is
I would not agree with that.
okay. So why are they putting this out there? Why is that propaganda being
People
put
be
out there?
lying all the time on the internet, man. Like basically the DEA person is somebody that is pro prohibition, right? Like they've said that they think it's bad. Cannabis has no medical value. They're repeating the same line the usual DEA would say. We had some hope that RFK was going
Right.
to be as
That's
Health and Human Health and Human Services Secretary, would be a bit more proactive. But then he said he was going to defer to the DEA, and so we're seeing a lot of appointments in the Trump administration that do not bode well for cannabis. There's some that have a little bit more leniency on psychedelics, but for the most part, we are not seeing a very progressive or even libertarian
and
administration.
this is the DEA you have to go to, right? I know you and I have discussed if cannabis became legal on a federal level, which agencies should be regulating it. This is the
Well,
DEA, so he's not going to FDA for. They're not.
right.
You're not.
So
So
They,
that's
they
kind
all
of
they all
good.
do different things though, right? So it kind of depends, like what you're talking about specifically. So the FDA would handle any medical claims on any products that come from the cannabis plant, right? So if it says this cures cancer, this is really good for your glaucoma, et cetera, that's the FDA, right? But in order to have a drug go through the FDA, there's all kinds of processes depending on what schedule it's in. And so a drug can't go through the FDA as Schedule 1, although because of the Farm Bill and other things, we've actually seen in the past that there are cannabis products that go through the FDA, cannabidiol and
Right.
all these other things, right? Like Sativex and things like that. And so it is nothing is ever 100% crystal clear with the federal government. If you got enough money, you can bend the rules however you
Yeah.
want. But the DEA is the one that would handle any sort of reports on rescheduling cannabis or descheduling cannabis or any recommendations on any of that. The Health and Human Services Secretary does not have to listen to the DEA, but he has said he's going to. And so
Okay. And
it's
so
possible
yeah,
if there was different folks there, it could go a different way, but it doesn't look like that. So the DEA is generally the agency that is deferred to when it comes to
decriminal.
decriminalizing, descheduling, controlled Schedule 1 controlled substance.
So right now we're looking at descheduling, not even decrim. Um, and what schedule are we looking? Are we looking for a complete
Well,
descheduling, or
complete
what schedule
descheduling.
do they want to? What schedule are they proposing? Because I know Connecticut, we got it down to Schedule 2. Okay, so what are they proposing? What is their on the federal level? What are you seeing as what they're willing to do?
Nothing.
Nothing. Leave it as
Nothing.
Schedule
Right.
One, even though they
So
know they can make a ton of money. Now, this administration is about money. They
sure.
can make a
Yes.
ton of money off cannabis
So
legalization.
this administration is coming in after a previous one, right? So it is a continuation of whatever the policy was before.
That was
Biden,
Jeff Sessions, though. That was awful.
well, no, like Biden's folks, right? So like Biden put forward, a
He
recommendation that it gets moved to Schedule 3 through his Health and Human Services secretary at the time, right? And so then the DEA became part of the hearing process about whether or not this is going to move forward. The DEA then did a bunch of shady things that
Yes, they
caused a lot of
did.
delays, right? And so this is like the worst part of all this is that the DEA decides to just be incompetent or do things that are against the rules. It just delays the process indefinitely. So
Right.
then when the Trump administration came in, they haven't said that they're not going to do anything. And they have said that the scheduling issue is like a top priority, but they're not saying that they want Schedule 3 specifically, nor are they saying that like it's definitely going to happen. They just said it is a priority for the DEA, which could be a priority to slow it down and do nothing.
Right,
So,
right.
but I and the Last Prisoner Project and all the other advocates in the Unity Coalition want full descheduling. We don't think it should be scheduled at all. It should be
Right. It
treated
should be an
much more
agricultural product
similarly.
or a medicine, right?
Right. Much more similarly tobacco or alcohol, although very different from tobacco and alcohol. I personally think the recommendation should be that the growing of the product, both on the hemp side and on the high THC side, and the processing of the plant should be handled by the U.S. Department of Agriculture,
Ag.
right?
I
Like
agree.
as
I agree.
agricultural products. Then any products that are packaged, any consumer packaged goods, any beverages, pre-rolls, edibles, any tinctures, lotions, right, should be under.
Dispensary products.
Right, should be under the TTB, which is the agency that currently regulates tobacco and alcohol. And then anything that has a serious medical claim that says it's going to be treating a particular illness would go under the FDA and has a different route because then it could be covered by insurance. And so that's how I would
Right.
regulate cannabis, moving
Ideally,
forward.
right. Put it in. I always thought it should be that way. All three agencies taking because with cannabis, we have the industrial component with the
Sure.
hemp.
Yep.
Okay. So that is Department of Ag, and it's going to end up being Department of Commerce eventually. And then so we got that whole area with the hemp and the growing aspect. And then, like you say, then you're going to have the consumer products.
Sure.
It's gonna be like alcohol. It's gonna be
Mhm.
like tobacco. There is that aspect of it.
Yep.
So you need a whole nother agency. But to me, the medicinal
Hmm.
part is where the real action is. Let's put it
Sure.
that
Yeah, the real
way.
possibilities and opportunities for sure, but
Yeah.
also just has a higher standard than a lot of other like products, right? And so whether or not there are cannabis products that are over the counter that say, hey, this helps with pain versus this will, treat a very
Yeah, I,
serious
wa- I would like
illness.
to see an
Right.
alternative to chemo and stuff
Sure.
created from THC and
Yep.
cannabis.
But partly why we need the Evidence-Based Drug Policy Act is because the main research institution isn't allowed to say the positives of cannabis, right? And so
Catch
it'd be very,
22.
very difficult to make that claim if they're not even allowed to report on the positive findings. Now, all three of those situations, though, are all business regulation, right? They don't
Right.
touch on the decriminalization aspect.
You're right.
The
The
federal
human.
government has a whole sentencing table for all the various drugs and all the various like iterations of how selling or consuming and possessing or manufacturing, right? There's all these different types of penalties that could happen. And so that sentencing table would have to be reformed as well to actually decriminalize or even just reduce the penalties for cannabis at the federal level. So all of this other regulation stuff, we still need a huge push on decriminalization that is very technical and would need to be part of it, but is only possible once we reschedule or deschedule cannabis. That's when it kicks in that now there's a reason to amend the sentencing tables. Before that, you're going to be very, hard pressed to present to the board that they should change the current sentencing table. Although we are also doing that right now as Last Prisoner Project, and that's why it's an uphill battle there. Really, full descheduling is the only thing that would allow for agricultural products to boom, for the medicinal products to get researched, and for the consumer products to be, available and accessible. We really need full descheduling. Rescheduling
I
will
agree.
only
I agree.
slightly change it and probably would not solve 99% of the concerns and issues that our community has.
No, I agree with you. That's the only way to go and progress. And how far do you? I think we're 10 years away At
I
least.
mean, it's like I don't know if like putting a time limit on it is really what it is, right? It's more we have to create a political climate that is going to be supportive of this type of action, and that doesn't
Mm.
necessarily take a decade, right? Like we've already put in a lot of work. The public opinion side is with us, right? It has been with us for a very long time, and now we're at the point where even the majority of Republicans agree that we have to have some kind of regulation of cannabis products, and so if we shift our approach, that could shift the timeline significantly. And so, like this week that we had
Yeah, I want to talk about
last
that.
month, right? We had to focus very heavily on Republicans, and there are a lot of Republicans that are interested in hearing from us or talking to us. They're starting to co-sponsor bills. The Prepare Act itself has a handful of Republicans that are currently co-sponsors of the bill, and that bill is co-sponsored by David Joyce, who is one of the Cannabis Caucus co-chairs. So in Congress, there's all these caucuses, right? So it could be the
Of course.
Latino caucus, it could be the Progressive Democrat caucus, it could be the Radical Libertarian caucus, right? They can kind of associate however they want, but sometimes it's around specific issues, right? So like cannabis legislation. So there's four co-chairs of that caucus. David Joyce, who's a Republican from Ohio, Brian Mast, who is a Republican from Florida,
Ooh.
Ilhan Omar, who is the person that helped
Oh,
us the
well, we
most with
know
Unity
that.
Week,
Yep.
right? So she is she's represented from Minnesota, and she's on the Democratic side, and Dina Titus, who's a Democratic representative from Nevada. So those are the four Congress people that will be conversing on anything related to cannabis moving through the House, at least.
Okay, so you got it's okay. So you
And the
got a
Prepare
mix.
Act
That's
has,
good.
yeah, so the Prepare Act has David Joyce, who's the main person, and the most senior of all the four caucus chairs, and Hakeem Jeffries, who's actually the leader of the
Oh, yeah,
Democrats in
sure.
the House, right?
Sure.
So, like, it has bipartisan support already. So, I don't want to put it out there that's like 10 years, but there's a certain number of dominoes that have to fall, and how
Right.
quickly those fall will be up to how effectively we organize.
Yeah, and I was saying full legalization 10
Yeah,
years. You know what I
sure.
mean?
But I think
But
it could happen like as simple as we could pass something in this Congress, the Democrats
of
take
the
over the next
decrim.
one,
Yeah.
right? Like, and so then the Democrats take over in the midterm elections. We could get a bill through the House that Trump wants to sign, right? Because he wants to get the win on cannabis, and it
Right.
could
That's
happen
what
pretty
I
quick.
think.
Yeah,
With this guy, you got to appeal to his ego. You know that. You
yeah,
know
so,
that. And then the money,
yeah,
money.
yeah,
Show him how much money. Go in there with a spreadsheet. And then I'm telling you, he'll
yeah.
sign executive order.
Well, I mean, we've actually considered trying to figure out how he could do that too, because he's definitely one that doesn't necessarily care about precedent, right? So you don't
No,
just
he
do
doesn't.
something and
As a matter
force
of
the
fact,
lawyers
if
to
you
fight about
told
it.
him that Obama was against it, he'd
Right.
do it.
Right, exactly. And so it is something that he could do a number of executive orders. He could tell the DEA to stop enforcing cannabis laws. There's all kinds of, he could do another Cole memo, which basically says that the DEA won't enforce laws on state legal businesses, which is what the States 2.0 Act is trying to do. And then he could pardon every single cannabis prisoner that's currently in prison. And so the president has the power to actually release folks without anybody else's approval that are in there, and he has used his pardon power very
Yeah.
judiciously.
Somebody
Like
should
he's
point it out. I mean, all you need is a good
well,
salesperson in there who knows how to
so
stroke
he
his
did a point.
ego.
He did a point. I mean, it's getting. I mean, there's a lot of fluffing going on, so you got to be able to like
Oh,
rise
yeah.
to a level of fluff. Like I don't have a jet, a $400 million
You got to
jet to
think
give him.
Elon's
You
got to be
know,
for it. I mean,
I mean, you would think, right? But he did appoint Alice Johnson as his pardon czar. So he did like bring on somebody that he pardoned actually to kind of be the face of that operation. That being said, his pardon attorney that he just appointed was the same attorney that threatened a DC dispensary with closure because they didn't uphold federal law, which none of the dispensaries in the country uphold federal law, right? So there's definitely opportunity there, and then a lot of walls in front of him
yeah.
in order to get there. But that's why we're here to knock down
No,
those
I
walls
really
one at a
do.
time, one brick by brick, and then get there eventually. And so, if anybody has an extra jet they could donate to the cause, we can get a good meeting. But
Yeah,
until
something.
then, we're gonna have to do it the old-fashioned way.
I'm sure there are other things that appeal to him besides
Sure,
jets. But
sure,
anyway,
yeah,
I wanted to show this video of Joe
yeah,
and the
definitely.
can of warriors down there. I thought it was kind of cool. Let me make sure I can play it here. Here it is. Wait. I got to stop it because I did not. Hold on. Press. Share the audio. There we go. Where'd it go?
It's a little small on my screen.
Yeah, hold on. I gotta find it now. Shit. I gotta move everything around. Sorry. Anyway, let's keep talking while I open this thing back up. All
Yeah, and I
right.
can say so. Joe and Audrey and Duncan were there to help be part of the lobby day that we did, and so we had dozens of folks knocking on doors. There was over like 40 scheduled meetings, and Joe and folks went to see Senator Murphy to talk about cannabis, and so you should definitely have him on to talk about how that conversation went.
Yeah,
But we
I'm going to
also
have them on at the end of session. Here, I'm going to play this right now.
What are you doing here today?
It's a little blurry.
Raymond Achitulo. I'm with the CT Canna Warriors, and I'm here with Last Prisoner Project, Jason Ortiz, and we are out here to let all the politicians know on a federal level that we want the rest of the people sitting in jail for cannabis out now.
And who are you meeting with?
Today we'll be meeting with Senator Chris Murphy's office, and we have a whole list of senators in the Hart Building that we're going to be stopping by and letting them know what our message is today.
And what is your message today?
Deschedule cannabis and release all cannabis prisoners now.
Nice. How about the rest of the team? Any words, Mr. Duncan?
Connecticut's coming in strong. We're excited to be back at Senator Murphy's office this year. We're grateful for our work with his aide Natalia, and we're coming strong again. So be ready for us.
Audrey, any last words of encouragement?
Release these prisoners.
All right, all right. Thank you all so much for coming out. Appreciate you. Yeah.
Free the plant, free the people.
Go get them,
baby. I like that. Free the plant, free the people. That's the way to do it.
yeah.
So-
And they got that in one take, man.
That's right. Yeah, and you were the cameraman and the interviewer.
Yeah.
So-
You know, when you're in this movement, you got to be all things all the time.
As we
And
know,
that was
of
definitely
course.
a week where I had to do a lot of different roles because we had a big press conference before that. We had the big lobby day. We had a big rally in front of the White House. Although the rally from the White House was a little bit wonky because the Secret Service actually shut the whole park down, like as we were setting up the stage.
Why?
So they're like, well, we don't know exactly why because somebody was visiting the White House. It could have been that Trump was arriving. It actually is possible. And then some people were taking pictures. So they don't tell you why. They just tell you got to get out. And then it was like 3 hours later, they let me back in. And it was a little tough to keep the rally going, but we did it.
Yeah.
We know we did the thing. But definitely the lobby day was the most successful. And like Joe and Audrey and folks were there for the press conference, which Congresswoman Ilhan Omar and Dina Titus were with us at that press conference.
Okay, so you are getting congressional support, and that's good. And they were telling me a little bit about what they did. They actually went around and all you guys and visited every freaking senator,
Every single congressman.
every one congressman
both.
and senator.
534 doors, 35 doors were hit, and actually a couple more because of the territories like Puerto Rico. But basically, we had a lot of scheduled meetings where we would go and talk to each individual person that was like our representatives. But on top of that, we had a few other strategies. So SSDP, shout out to Students
Yes,
Responsible Drug
they were
Policy.
telling me how great they were
They brought
doing.
a whole bunch of volunteers to go in every building by building, door by door. So they would go, say somebody would be in the Rayburn building. There'd be a team of folks that would be knocking on the door saying, hi, I'm with the Unity Coalition. Here's some information. We just want to talk to your person that handles cannabis policy, right? And they wouldn't have a whole big conversation. They would just get the contact info and go. But it meant that they were able to hit every single door in every single building. So we had every door getting hit with literature, then also scheduled meetings. And then on top of that, we had some special groups, like Joe was saying, other folks we either need to say thank you to folks like Elizabeth Warren for the amazing work and support that she's been doing, right? Or folks like Tom Tillis, who's a Republican for North Carolina, and he's had some really positive things to say about regulating cannabis. Or folks that have just been super helpful, like our co-chairs and other people that have been supportive. And so we had 3 different strategies of how we were going to contact folks. So not only did we hit every single person at least once, a lot of them we hit twice or more.
Now, I'm assuming our Connecticut senators and representatives are pro-cannabis, or do we still have some work to do in our state as far as on the federal level? I see maybe Murphy, yes, but I'm seeing Blumenthal, no. I don't know.
Blumenthal tends to tell me he just supports a states' rights approach. Like, he won't tell me no, like he's against legalization, but I think he's going to tell me something that he knows isn't going to happen anytime soon, just so I go away, right? And so that's been his line. Murphy's a little bit more interested in the details, right? Neither of them are opposed, though, so they really are good targets to persuade and let them know this is a top issue because they're winnable, right? For sure.
Right. Right.
And
Now
then
on
on
the
the House
House,
side, Johanna Hayes has been pretty supportive. Like
right.
she's actually, pretty good on this particular issue. Joe Courtney, who's my old congressman, has been sort of softly supportive. Like he hasn't really come out against it or anything like that, but he's definitely not someone that's going to lead on it.
Yeah, he's not going to be a leader,
And
right?
the rest of the folks, Himes and Larson, right? They're kind of like on it. Rosa DeLauro has been
Yeah,
relatively
Rosa. I always
supportive.
want to know what Rosa thinks.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, her office has always like been nice and like listen, but again, like not a top priority, which is the
I
problem
would
with
not
cannabis
think
on the
so.
space. I mean, she was the chair of the Appropriations Committee, which is the money committee, so she definitely has bigger fish to fry, to say, right? But I think being in Connecticut, you are in a space where you have like weak support, and so that's a perfect
Yeah.
opportunity to advocate, right? Like get those folks more on board. Love to see Johanna Hayes leading some of these things or coming to our press conferences, et cetera. And so definitely like worth reaching out to folks if you live in
Well,
Connecticut.
what I've always found interesting about the federal and the state level is the disconnect
Mm,
between the two, because these good people are representing a state that
yeah,
has legalized cannabis, both medically,
correct.
and has decriminalized cannabis. So they're representing a state that has already done this. You think they would be more supportive of it because their own state is actually breaking federal law and doing
Sure.
exactly what this law is trying to protect it from.
Yeah,
So,
you would think so, but that just doesn't translate that way because there's different politics at play, right?
yeah,
And so in Connecticut, folks are deciding state policy, but folks like Chris Murphy, right, are fighting with Republicans from Louisiana who are going to attack him for whatever it is, right? And so the other, I think, more frustrating or confusing or point of opportunity, right, is red states that have adult use but have Republican representatives for the entire state, like Ohio, right? So David Joyce is supportive, of course,
right.
but there's a number of those states that we can be working on those Republicans.
Arizona, is that red
Arizona,
now? What
absolutely.
color
Yep.
is Arizona? I don't even
Yeah,
know
Arizona. I
anymore.
mean, there's a ton of Republicans in California, right?
Right.
And so, like, there's definitely folks that I think are in that same situation that it just doesn't translate automatically, right? We definitely have some work to do there, and it's kind of frustrating because half of the states right now, and definitely way more than the majority of the members of the House are in adult use states.
Right. Right. Exactly. We're
New
almost
York,
at the
California.
point where we have a
Obviously, with that traffic
majority.
we just hit.
Yep.
For 20.
Are we now? Are we in the? We do we have a majority of states?
No, so it's
Not
24
yet,
states in
right?
DC. It's
24.
24 in DC. So it's like, like, I don't know. And, if you could include the territories, does that put us over? But we are in the majority of people in the country because a lot of the biggest states are adult
Are
use.
legal,
Yeah.
right?
And so California, New York, and many other big ones, Massachusetts, New Jersey. Yeah.
I got to think in the 2026 elections there will be some other states bringing it up.
So I don't know because there's not that many that can actually swing over. Pennsylvania is the big one that is still likely to legalize at some point. That
Florida?
hasn't. Nah, man, DeSantis isn't
Nah,
gonna let it
he's really
happen.
putting.
Right? Like
Yeah,
they tried to do it through the ballot measure, but the legislature is too conservative. If anything, he wants it to go the other way. He's trying to make it harder to put cannabis back
medical.
on the ballot. Yeah. Well, not medical. They already have medical. So if we're
Right.
talking medical is the majority of the states.
Yeah, I know that.
Yeah.
So we're close to with recreation. I'm just trying to think
Yep.
of any. Now I know Arkansas was looking at it.
All the states that are left are pretty hard to pass
But
states. Yeah.
well, they got medical there, so
Because like look at Texas, right? Like Texas is trying to
Texas has
criminalize hemp.
nothing.
Yeah, and they want to make hemp more criminalized right now
I
with
know.
SB3 in Texas. So we've kind of hit all of the easy states. I want to say easy, even a lot of the medium difficulty
The
states.
low hanging fruit, right?
Pennsylvania will be the big one, right? Because it's also such a big swing state that when that state falls, the politics changes on the issue nationally. And so that's the one I would keep looking out for. There's not, I'm trying to think if there's any other ones that are really close. Like you can maybe think of a Georgia, but even that's kind of hard to imagine that
I'd have
happening.
to just look at the medical states and see if
Yeah.
there's.
Georgia does have limited medical.
I know Arkansas has some medical.
Yeah. And then you get like
Um,
things like Kansas and Oklahoma. Well, like those, Oklahoma has a huge medical industry. It's actually one of the easiest places to get
See,
a
those would
license.
be the states I'd go after.
Yep. And so, yeah, I mean, we got to get 218 votes in the House and 60 votes in the Senate to pass any bill and get it to the president's desk. So we're going to have to get them from all over the place.
Yeah, most definitely. And this is just even to get descheduling. This is just to get it started.
This is just to get anything passed.
Yeah.
I mean, 218 Congress people, House members, House representatives, and 60 senators. The Senate is actually the really hard one because you're unlikely to see either party like sign
Move.
on with or because you're going to need at least 7 of the other party votes, and that's if you
Right.
include like all the Republicans and all the Democrats vote. But even then, you're likely to lose 2 or 3 that are just like
Of
I'm
the
not
other
gonna vote
side,
for
right,
this.
right.
Right. And so you really need 10 members of the opposition party to sign on to legalization to get it through the Senate with the support of the Senate leadership. And John Thune, who's the Republican leader of the Senate, is not supportive. So there's definitely a lot of work that we're going to have to get through. But that's why I think the Prepare Act is the right bill to push for, because it does have bipartisan support. And it's really just a
Yeah.
glorified task force bill. It won't change anything too significantly. And let's start there, right? It wouldn't be the first time we had to start with a task force bill. But I think that's the way to move forward on it.
Yeah, so I was going to say out of the 3, you think that's the most important. Okay.
Yep.
Out of the 3 you mentioned. All right, let's talk about prisoner release.
Sure.
So where are we at with that now? How are we looking? I know Biden had started an initiative, and now we are in a new administration. Where are we at with that?
Sure. So, I mean, not much as far as cannabis prisoners are concerned have happened under the Trump administration. And to be honest, not much happened specific to cannabis under the Biden administration.
No,
So
no.
he did issue a ton of pardons at the very end of his term, and commutations, I should say. A pardon is when the government forgives your crime and says you're no longer going to be treated like a criminal about this. A commutation is when they actually shorten your sentence to be less years than you originally got. And then an expungement is where they erase the records of the crime. You really want all 3 of those, right? But Biden did commute a bunch of sentences for people that were in there for drug crimes, but it was actually folks that were impacted by the crack cocaine, the powder to crack cocaine
Right.
disparity, which was a terrible thing. Like they
Oh,
did deserve to
absolutely.
get that out of there, right? But they didn't do anything on cannabis. And so there were some folks that got caught in the same effort on the cocaine side of it that were released, that were in jail for cannabis crimes as well. And so roughly 10 of our people got out at the end of the Biden administration, of our roughly, I would say, 100 or so federal prisoners that we represent.
Okay.
But then when Trump came in, he issued all kinds of pardons and commutations, but none of them were for cannabis folks, right? He pardoned the January 6th folks. He pardoned a bunch of other people that were able to afford a pardon, I should say. And so far, not much direct action. That being said, he did appoint Alice Johnson, who is somebody that he appointed previously to be the pardon czar, to have these conversations. And he is looking into give me the list of people, right? So there is action happening within the White House as far as discussions of who might get picked, but nothing has really happened quite yet. That being said, he's definitely open to it. He's definitely said, I want to, see what we can do on this, and has not said anything negative, right? And so that's where we're at on the federal level, right? And then there have been people getting released at the state level, constantly in various capacities. I was really lucky to be joined at the Unity Week by Deshaun Durham, who is somebody from Kansas that Dante West, who's on our staff, was able to help get released this past fall. And so he was able to be there and be in DC and lobby and tell his story. And so we are seeing folks get released on the state level at a regular basis. So there's definitely progress happening. Unfortunately, we are also still arresting people. And so folks are going into jail and creating more prisoners. But there are folks like Jose Sepulveda, who is someone that got released recently, who was in for a life sentence before. And so he's definitely happier now that he's been released. And then on the flip side, you have folks like Kevin Allen in Louisiana, who got a life sentence reduced to 35 years, but he's still going to be there until he dies, probably. And Kevin Allen in Louisiana is a constituent of Mike Johnson, who's the Speaker of the House for the Republicans. So we're in a space now where things are all over the place. We're, depending on what state you live in, dramatically changes what your possibilities for freedom are. And that's a really horrible way to address something that is impacting all of us with this justice by geography thing, where if you're driving across the country, there's going to be 15 different legalities from Connecticut to California, and you have no idea what's going to happen if you get caught.
That's the problem, right?
Oh, absolutely. So again, I don't want folks to feel like there's not action happening or that there's not progress and momentum, because there definitely is. Even within Republican spaces and Republican legislatures, Ohio, right? That's a very red state. They got to get adult use. And so we are still seeing progress. That being said, there is a lot of work that we still need to do. And we really do have to do this at the federal level, because that's going to be the one thing that tips all the dominoes in all the states. So I think that's where my focus is going to be over the next few years. But a lot of these folks need to be hit at home, whatever state that they're in.
So you mentioned there's really, we're down to 100 a little bit over 100 federal prisoners, right?
Well, in our program,
In
right?
your
So
program,
there's
okay.
more like 3,000, although the number
Okay,
is really
all
squishy,
right,
right?
all
Because
right, good.
people come in and out,
Right.
right? And so, like, it's not a static number, like, there's exactly 2,000, and then we just kind of go down the list, right? And then eventually get to zero. It's a
Yeah,
bit
because
more
you're right.
messy
There's
than that.
still different
Yep,
states are arresting different people on, and it's still a federal offense, and
for
depending on
sure,
what
for
you're getting
sure.
arrested for. And I think this is the thing. You obviously have a better chance of getting people released or pardoned in states that have legalized.
Sure,
So
absolutely. Yeah.
we're talking probably like you were saying, the most egregious states are the ones that are still very prohibition heavy.
Yeah.
Louisiana,
Yeah.
Texas, that and the other
Right.
thing.
And
So
those governors are not likely to use their pardon power for cannabis prisoners, right? And
right.
so it's a very difficult situation at the state level to try to get folks out through executive action because the governors are actually so far in the other direction that they get political points by saying no to things like that.
Right,
And so
right.
we have to adjust our approach, right? We have to make it more Republican friendly. We have to talk about these issues in a way that appeals to Republican values and figure out how we can make this less of a them versus us situation because there are a lot, thousands of folks that are in prison for cannabis are
Sure.
Republicans, right? And so many of
Yeah,
our
that's
veterans,
true.
many of the veterans that are incarcerated for drug crimes, specifically for cannabis and sometimes other things. But those are Republican folks, right? That got caught
Yeah,
up in
that's
the
true.
system,
That's
right?
true.
And we're trying to medicate away pain that they got from serving our country. And those folks have been forgotten about. But that
Yeah.
being said, we are seeing organizations like the VFW recently testified in Congress saying that they do support cannabis and psychedelic medicine for veterans to help reduce the suicide rate for our veterans. And so like organizations like that are coming on board with legalization.
That's good.
That's where our work has to shift, right? Is building bridges with the veterans organizations that are doing the right thing for their people by getting them the medicine that will help them. And
Right.
our job is to focus on how do we make an
Yeah,
environment
creating the
where those folks
partnerships. Yeah, yeah,
feel
yeah.
welcome, right? Like right now, the cannabis justice movement can be a little off-putting for some of the folks that
Yeah,
are on the
sure.
right,
A
right?
little
And
too
so
radical for them, right?
yeah, right. And it's just a bit, it's been really focused on racism and things
Yeah,
that
yeah.
are
The
very
whole
clear.
equity. Yeah,
And like
yeah.
that is true. Like there's no getting around the history of that. And also, right, if we are really committed to actually legalizing the plant, we have to create an environment that's going to make us powerful enough to do that. And we have to make space for Republican folks to be part of the
Yeah,
movement in order
everybody.
to get there. Right, everybody,
Anybody who's been
exactly.
affected, it doesn't matter.
Absolutely.
You
Regardless of
know,
party, regardless of your occupation, there's like 1,000 different ways folks can come in.
that's the
But
one thing
that's
about
our challenge.
cannabis.
But
It
that's our challenge as
overreaches that.
organizers, right? Like we have to be the one to create that environment so that those
Yes.
folks are able to join us in the fight, right? And so far, we have not put enough effort in that direction, but I think that's where we're at now, and I'm excited to see how it goes.
All right, very good. Now we are almost out of time. I did want to mention real quick that thanks to our efforts here in Connecticut, I did receive a full pardon
Yay!
through the program that Tiana Hercules
Nice.
instituted there, and many of us did. There were quite a few people in that program, but I did receive my full pardon, and that is due to our efforts in getting
Yes.
that done here in Connecticut, and I'm
Yep.
hoping that more people can get the same thing done.
For
But I do
sure.
appreciate
I
that.
do want to flag one thing that's happening in Connecticut that is like really driving me crazy. This is happening. Like, if folks could reach out to whoever the representatives are that are doing the bill that is going to shift funds from the equity fund into an enforcement fund,
Yeah,
it's got to
that's
be the most ridiculous thing I've heard in a really long time, and
yeah,
something that
ridiculous.
folks really should reach out to the Canna Warriors, get involved in fighting that because this is
Oh,
something that we
that's
don't
their
want to
big
see.
fight.
Yeah, it
That's
is. And it's
it
something that on a
is.
national level, we don't want to see this wave start to move and use cannabis,
Yeah.
legal cannabis tax revenue for enforcements. Like, this is the opposite of what we
Yeah,
should be
no,
doing. The equity fund is literally there to heal the damage done by the war on
yeah,
drugs.
not
And you're
create
using
more.
it to fuel the war on drugs. Like, this is a horrible,
Wrong.
horrible thing
And they
that is
don't
being put
need a
forward.
task force, Jason. We were
No.
talking
Well,
about that earlier.
they don't need any more, like,
They're already
enforcement. Yeah.
busting people. They just, we were going over there like 4 busts last week.
Yeah.
What
And
do they
these
need
folks
a
have
task
other
force for?
budgets. Like they have other budgets. They don't need to get money from the equity fund to do this. And
No.
really, it's just a pretty clear reversal of the understanding that enforcement is only going to create more problems.
Yeah,
Right?
and the
Like you
same thing
can,
with the smell, right?
Sure,
We're
exactly.
talking right now. You want to be able to bust more people because they smell like weed. It
Right.
really, it's a dangerous, slippery slope. We're here. We need
Right.
you back
So
here.
get
I'm
out
glad.
there, fight that fight. Like it'll help us on the national level. But here at home in Connecticut, we got to make sure they don't do horrible things. And one of those things that would be shifting equity dollars to enforcement. So
Yeah,
if
I
there's anything I can
agree.
encourage folks to get involved in our local level, it's that. And thank you all so much for fighting the
How
good
long
fight.
you
And
here
it's
for,
always
Jason?
just till Thursday, actually.
Okay, and can anybody catch you out there? You're just doing meetings.
I mean, well, we'll see. Feel free to reach out. Let's see. I got a
All
few
right,
days left, and I'm trying to use it to the best of my ability
all
before
right,
I go to Denver for a couple weeks for psych science and a whole bunch of different conferences out there.
all right. Let's see if we can hook up and get you, get together while you're here.
All right,
Thank you for
brother.
coming
Would
on.
love
How do
to.
they reach you, real quick?
Jason at lastprisonerproject.org is my email, and lastprisonerproject.org is where you can find all the stuff about LPP. Check it out. Let us know what you think. And also, if you know anyone in prison that is there for a cannabis crime, please reach out to us so that we can get them assistance and support and then eventually get them home.
All right, Jason. Thank you for coming on. We miss you here in Connecticut, but I
Thank you.
think
I miss you all too.
we're in good hands. Thanks for everything you
And
have
then come
done.
join me in Puerto Rico, bro. We
You
got
got
work
a
to do
spare
there.
room or
Yeah,
what?
I do actually have. I have a
All
couple, so
right.
come hang.
I'm booking a flight soon. I'll talk to you later, Jason. We love you. Good to see you, man. Thanks
Of
for
course,
all the
brother.
great info, and we will talk to you soon. Harry, we're ready. Say goodbye. All right, you can like, share, subscribe, follow me at Joe the Weed Guy, also at Greenhaven Media. Looks like Farmer Lou is off, but you can follow Nautilus Botanicals and Farmer Lou on social media. And we will see you all. We are off air next week, but I will see you on June the 2nd. Thank you so much. Enjoy your Memorial Day. We love you all.